It started with the discovery of a barrel. 300 feet away, a second was found. Inside of them were the remains of 4 bodies. That's where the Bear Brooks case begins, as explored in a podcast by New Hampshire Public Radio. It's one of hundreds of true crime podcasts that frequently top the iTunes charts.
30 years ago this month, a mystery began when the remains of an adult and what we will find out will be the oldest child were discovered in a bag next to an overturned 55-gallon drum. So today we want to announce results of new radioisotope testing that has been conducted.
This press conference was the point NHPR reporter Jason Moon got plunged into the world of true crime. He was at first mostly just intrigued by the science behind the investigation, which is unsurprising. The Bear Brook case used isotope fingerprints to place geographical markers on the victims. As we eat food and drink water, our bodies take in different isotopes. Analysis of these isotopes, particularly strontium, oxygen and sulfur, can be used to identify where and how they enter the body, and this can provide important clues to a case.
From these kind of chemical markers, they could come up with guesses about where they lived, where they may have traveled in life. And I was really, frankly, surprised, shocked that that was possible, that science existed.
But chemistry lessons don't draw in thousands of listeners. Jason soon realised as he began to report on the story that the people involved were what was so compelling and intriguing. He found he had this very science-orientated angle, but then these characters brought the case to life. These characters are really what carry the podcast and draw you into the story. It's here that you can really see why people may get drawn into true crime. Figures like Roxanne Grunheid, the Californian detective who had a strange habit of saying everything is goofy, or the flat, monotone detective Peter Headley, who had a penchant for skydiving.
I'm always looking for unique details that I can use to help you attach onto these characters, and it seems to affect people in kind of personal ways often.
Jason was invited to contribute to a study by Kelly Bowling from the University of South Carolina. She found a number of domestic abuse victims are avid listeners of true crime podcasts. Kelly spoke to a group of self-identified abuse survivors and was told that Bear Brook was actually one of their favourites.
These women are silenced. The idea that this violence exists is silenced. And so by listening to a true crime podcast, they are able to immerse themselves into a world where their experience is normalized. And it is oddly comforting.
You can find out more about Kelly's research in the next video on who listens to true crime podcasts. Answering this question, though, of why people enjoy true crime is one that has troubled Jason.
There's certainly a danger, taking pleasure in the, in the pain of others. And to this day, I feel like if you're going to do a true crime story from the journalist's perspective, I imagine the moment where I need to call up the, relatives of the victim and ask for an interview. I have to have a reason myself to justify doing the story.
With the Bear Brooks case, it was not just the audience that had become engrossed in the mystery. The investigation itself was heavily carried by web sleuths and amateur detectives, who themselves featured in the podcast. The case was solved by an amateur, Becky Heath finding the name of the suspected perpetrator, Terence Peder Rasmussen, as well as identifying 3 of the 4 victims, Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch and her 2 daughters, Mary and Sarah. Rhonda Randall and her brother also worked alongside the authorities to help identify the victims. They would regularly spend 40 hours a week flicking through phone books, conducting interviews, and trying to find any scrap of information to help move the case along.
I think because I lost a niece to a death when she was 2.5 years old, and I think that was tied in my mind to the fact that the little girls were unidentified, because I thought of my niece who passed away, who we just loved so much and wanted to keep on this planet, and then these little girls that nobody was coming forward to claim them. And so I think emotionally I was kind of hooked into it that way.
Rhonda effectively acted as the victim's advocate in the case. No one knew who the victims were. So without a family pushing for justice, had Rhonda and Becky not gotten involved, it is entirely possible that the case would have never been solved. But whilst in this scenario amateurs proved heroic, there is a dark side to online sleuthing, one that revealed itself with the case of Sunil Tripathi. Tripathi was a student from Brown University that went missing in March 2013, a month before the Boston Marathon bombing. Internet detectives soon began suggesting that Sunil's disappearance was because he was the attacker. Journalists from major outlets began spreading the theory, and the Tripathi family had to watch as their missing son became one of America's most wanted criminals without a shred of evidence. Of course, Sunil was not the culprit, but Chechen Kyrgyzstani American brothers Zhorha Tsarnaev and Tamerlan Tsarnaev, which was only revealed after the Tripathi family had to go through the heartbreak of having their son targeted by the world's media. Rhonda came into contact with the dark side of the internet's true crime fascination during her investigations.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of really weird people in that world, like, I do mean crazy, so there's that element of people that get attracted to it, and they even make up stories and insert themselves into cases, and they're kind of frightening.
The Bear Brook podcast highlights the good, the bad, and the ugly of our true crime fascination. Obsession can lead to justice in terms of the women killed by Rasmussen, but it can also bring pain. It can bring pain to the victim's family, pain to the wrongly accused, but at the same time, with responsible reporting, it can bring a comfort to survivors of a totally different kind of pain. Jason Moon has curated a powerful series that is an example to other journalists in how to approach true crime responsibly, ethically, and to not feed into the dark side of the genre's fandom.